I'll now be introducing our next speakers. Ms. Lhannie D. Estrera is currently pursuing her PhD at University of Tsukuba. She has a master's in behavioral science, Tsukuba University, and a bachelor's degree in psychology from University of the Philippines. Her interest is in language in general, but her goal is to learn more about reading and its relevant cognitive processes, particularly in her mother tongue. Professor Akira Uno is a professor of the University of Tsukuba and president of Japan Dyslexia Research Association, JDRA. He is specialized for reading, spelling development in Japanese and developmental and acquired dyslexia. Since April 2017, he is also principal of the Experimental Special Needs Education School for Physically Challenged. We'll now like to invite Ms. Lhannie D. Estrera and Professor Akira Uno to present their research on the investigation of cognitive and environmental factors affecting spelling of third-grade Filipino children. Can we put our hands together for them?
Thank you for the introduction. So I'm Lhannie Estrera, and we're already halfway through our session. I hope everyone is still here with me. Are you guys still here? Can I get a loud yes? Okay, thank you very much. Don't worry, my presentation is quite short. So just like what my title stated, my presentation for today is focusing on spelling and what kind of cognitive factors and environmental factors are affecting this ability. So throughout this session, throughout this conference, and I'm guessing based on your own background, we already know what is the big importance of reading and spelling abilities in our daily lives. This is important in which a deficit or disability in these skills would actually lead to difficulties in other different activities and in other different aspects of our lives. So through education and through organizations such as DAS, we have early detection and early intervention to prevent this kind of difficulty. Now, our study would like to contribute to early detection. And to achieve this goal, not only in our research, many researchers have already conducted regarding reading and spelling and the cognitive factors that are related to these abilities. And some of these are the examples. However, in particular for English, it is considered to be phonological awareness and naming speed are the two core factors for English reading and spelling. However, such finding may not be easily generalized to other languages as shown in cross-linguistic studies, in which, depending on a language, different cognitive factors may actually come into play. And in addition to cognitive factors, we also have environmental factors, and studies usually refer to this as home literacy environment. And this usually refers to the activity of the children, such as book reading and the involvement of the parents in teaching reading and spelling to the children. And so with the increasing number of studies all over the world about reading and spelling, there is actually hardly any studies with regards to the Philippines. And this is why it is the goal of this study to determine the spelling of to determine the cognitive and environmental factors that affect the spelling of Filipino children. So who are these Filipino children? Well, I could have been a Filipino child before, so I am actually from the Philippines. And to give a rough idea of where Philippines is, so we are just below Philippines. And so our country has actually two official languages, Filipino and English. And Filipino refers to the many languages being spoken all over the country. But for our study, we mainly focused on Tagalog, which is one of the mostly spoken or mostly known language all over the country, and the language usually being used in Manila, where we conducted our study. So both Filipino and English are actually studied as early as the first grade, and both languages are actually being used in different settings such as business and social gatherings. To give a brief background about Filipino and English. So these two languages are actually similar, in which both use the alphabet or the ABCs. However, they are different in which Filipino is considered to have a transparent writing system, while English is considered to have an opaque writing system. So what do we mean by this? Filipino has a transparent writing system, meaning the relationship between its letters and sound has an almost one-to-one correspondence. But for English, the relationship between its letters and sound has many interpretations. So a concrete example for this is something as simple as the letter A. So the A in Tagalog is consistently pronounced as A, as shown here in the example, A as in Tagalog and A as in mahal. And then for English, A can have different pronunciations depending on the letters that it's with. So the A in cat and apple is actually different from the A in army and car, and the A in aim and late. So these are just a few examples in how English is considered to have an opaque writing system. So again, with that kind of background, it is the goal of our study to investigate about the spelling of Filipino children. You might be wondering why I'm presenting spelling. Well, we have already presented a previous study regarding reading of Filipino children, and you can actually check out today's journal, the one that has been distributed to us, and we have a published study about reading for Filipino third grade children. So anyway, after that advertisement, moving on. So here is our methodology. We conducted our study to initially 102 third grade Filipino children, and we assessed for their cognitive and literacy skills. So to assess for their nonverbal intelligence test, we used the RCPM, or Raven Scholar Progressive Matrices test. So in this test, we asked the children to complete the figure. So here is an example. So for example, the correct answer here would be number 4. So they had a total of 36 items. For visual cognition, we used the Ray-Osterieff Complex Figure Test, or ROCFT, in which children had to copy this drawing 3 times. 1, while having a copy of it. 2nd, without looking at the copy. And then 3rd, the delayed recall, in which they had to copy this drawing again without a copy after 30 minutes. And then for naming speed, we used the Rapid Automatized Naming Test by Kaneko and colleagues. So they had to name the following digits and pictures as fast as they can. So here we used this test for both Filipino and in English. Next, for vocabulary, we used the Receptive Vocabulary Task by Martin and Brownell. Again, this was done both in Filipino and in English. So here the children had to choose the correct picture that would correspond to the target word. So for example, if I say basketball, what should the child use? 3. Okay. Just to check if you're still listening. And then next, we have phonological awareness. So first, for phoneme deletion task, again, we did this in both Filipino and in English. I'm guessing all of us already know this, but to have an example, the child was asked to first say the word, for example, food, and then say the word again without saying the sound the, so they have to say food. And then in addition, we also used syllable repetition in reverse order, but we only use this in Filipino since the words in Filipino are easily segmented compared to English, in which the syllables are kind of difficult to segment. So a concrete example would be first saying the word baboy, and then say it in reverse order by syllable, meaning boy ba. And then lastly, we use the verbal short-term memory task using non-word repetition task. And then for literacy measures, we measured not only their word spelling ability, but also their word reading ability. So for word spelling, we asked the children to spell 10 Filipino words. And then for English task, we divided the groups of word into two. So we had five regular and 5 irregular words. So regular words refer to the words that follow the consistent mapping rules of sounds and letters, while irregular words refer to the words that are exceptional or do not follow the consistent mapping rules. And similarly, we also did the word reading task. We assessed for their word reading accuracy. So 25 words for Filipino, and then 10 regular words and 10 irregular words for English. And to analyze the data, we used the multiple regression analysis, and we used only the scores of 98 children who scored above -2 SD of the mean in the intelligence test. So what we used for the independent variable are all of their scores in the cognitive tasks and word reading scores. And then for dependent variables, we used the word spelling scores. So as I've mentioned before, in addition to cognitive factors, we also had environmental factors. So what we did here is we distributed questionnaires to the parents or guardians of the children. So this asked about the frequency of book reading and the involvement of the parents in teaching reading and spelling and other activities of the child. So we used the principal components analysis to determine which environmental factors should be used as an independent variable in our analysis. So based on PCA, we had these following environmental factors: the exposure of children to reading, the involvement of parents on teaching on writing, and then for Filipino, we had activities not related to reading, and then for English, we had exposure to oral English. So after inputting these variables as independent variables in the analysis, we have found that for both Filipino and English spelling, these environmental factors were not significant at all. And then moving on to Filipino spelling, of all the cognitive tasks that we had, we only found phoneme awareness as the significant cognitive ability to predict Filipino spelling. And then for English spelling, so since we divided it into regular and irregular word spelling, we have found that similar to Filipino spelling, phoneme awareness significantly predicted regular and irregular word spelling. However, naming speed significantly predicted only regular word spelling, while receptive vocabulary predicted only irregular word spelling. So if we were to summarize our findings, we have found similarities and also differences with regards to the spelling of Filipino and English. So they are similar in which phoneme awareness predicted both Filipino and English spelling in general. And then we have found the difference in which naming speed and receptive vocabulary predicted English spelling, but not for Filipino spelling. So in addition to this analysis, we tried to include word reading as one of the independent variables. So what we have found is that word reading significantly predicted both Filipino and English spelling. And then a curious finding is that the contribution of the cognitive factors predicting English diminished, and phoneme awareness retained to be a significant cognitive predictor for Filipino spelling. So we can say that cognitive factors, or the contribution of cognitive factors, were mediated by word reading in its contribution to spelling. However, this kind of process may be true only for English spelling, as we have found that after putting word reading, the contribution of these different cognitive factors diminished. So what happened to Filipino spelling since phoneme awareness remained as a significant predictor? Well, we can still say that word reading mediated the effect of phoneme awareness, because in the previous study, one of the significant predictors for Filipino word reading is also phoneme awareness. However, in addition to this mediation effect, we can also say that independent of word reading, phoneme awareness may have a direct effect on Filipino spelling. So in conclusion, we can say that for Filipino spelling, we had these significant predictors: phoneme awareness, word reading, and for English, we had phoneme awareness, naming speed, receptive vocabulary, and word reading. We can say that these differences may be due to the difference in consistency and transparency of the two scripts, in which English is said to have a very opaque script, and that it's also important to note that English is learned as a second language, and so this could be the reason as to why there are more cognitive demands for spelling in English. And in addition, we would like to mention that environmental factors were not significant predictors. However, what we mean by environmental factors is the home literacy or the activities of the children. So this does not refer to the demographic background or the SES of the children. So if we were to conduct this study to a younger population, maybe kindergarten or grade 1, maybe environmental factors of home literacy background may have an effect. But for our population, since it's already the 3rd grade, there were no significant effect. So lastly, we can say that our findings have implications on language teaching and assessment, in which, although both Filipino and English languages are being used in the Philippines, we cannot say that what we know from their assessment scores in Filipino may be the same in our assessment scores in English. So thank you for your attention, and hope we can go through this conference successfully. See you all tomorrow.
Thank you, Ms. Lhannie, for the informative presentation. We'd now like to invite Professor Akira Uno up on stage, as well as Ms. Fanny, to present a token of appreciation to both of them.